Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hidzir,
Myself.
and in episode 45, we got lots to talk about, including a couple of big blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
The big one though is James Gunn's reboot slash sequel of the Suicide Squad called The Suicide Squad. We'll be talking about the latest season of Rick and Morty, the latest seasons of Legends of Tomorrow, Tuca and Bertie, including other films like the indie art house, Arthurian Legend, The Green Knight, big ones like Free Guy, um, Jungle Cruise, M. Night Shyamalan's new film, Old, and lots more. Meanwhile, Isa will be tackling the anime corner once
Mm-hmm.
again,
Yep.
bringing you some returning anime, some ongoing anime, but we'll be particularly highlighting lots of good new anime, highlighted by Sonny Boy, I think you were saying, right?
Yeah, Sonny Boy.
Yeah, also, Isa will be covering The Witcher prequel, sidequel,
Uh,
OVA,
prequel. I think prequel is pretty sound. Yeah, because
prequel, yeah.
we'll get into that.
Definitely, it's now out on Netflix just the previous week. It's called Nightmare of the Wolf. Isa, of course, is a big The Witcher fan, so I'm letting him tackle that right idea on the show.
Yeah.
But let's begin with the big one. James Gunn's Suicide Squad. It isn't so much a reboot or a sequel of 2016's Suicide Squad, as it is kind of a complete do-over. And this time, I think, or especially with relative to the first one,
Uh-huh.
this is a much bigger success.
Yeah.
In fact, this is kind of the irreverent, ultra-violent romp featuring F-list villains played by A-list actors.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think DC's best film in a good long while.
Yeah.
Um, the story is essentially the Dirty Dozen, but with supervillains. And it's one hell of a great time. Once again, if you don't know, the plot features a group of incarcerated super criminals, including Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Captain Boomerang, Ratcatcher 2, Savant, King Shark, Blackguard, Javelin, Harley Quinn, and much more. In exchange for lesser sentences, they're sent on a genuinely lethal Black Ops mission in the nation of Corto Maltese in order to counteract a coup that's happening there, which allows this thoroughly R-rated movie to finally live up to its name in gruesome fashion.
Yep.
Unlike the first movie, it's made abundantly clear that no one in its colorful cast is safe. And when these characters are killed off, it's not pretty, as director James Gunn kind of taps into his old gory days as a gross out B movie provocateur. Characters don't just go down, they get sliced and diced, incinerated, exploded, with blood and guts galore. Sometimes these over the top deaths are kind of done for shock value, sometimes for humor value, and sometimes they're meant to pull at our heartstrings. But they'll always inspire some kind of significant reaction, and I think that's why the film works very well. The Suicide Squad allows Gunn to lean into everything that he does best. Weaving the action and the drama and the wits and the toilet humor, which we've come to expect. But there's something a bit more here because I think like Gunn takes a perverse and strangely emotional roller coaster ride with a surprise around every corner. I think the film may essentially be a superhero or supervillain war caper on the
Yeah.
surface, but underneath, it's a good examination of DC's bottom of the barrel baddies. Um, Even the weirdest of the weird, like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2, are shown to have unseen depths worth exploring. Gunn clearly has a soft spot for outcasts and misfits in various comic universes, and here he creates sort of a twisted yet touching tribute to DC's sad, broken supervillains. What was your take on this new Suicide Squad?
Oh man. It was really fun. Really fun.
Yeah.
Definitely the best Suicide Squad that's come out thus far.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think quite easily the best thing DC has done in the movie so far.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect movie by any measure, but it has all the things that you're looking for out of a comic book movie in spades, right? And that in
Mm-hmm.
and of itself is, I think, a vast improvement from any of the other DC outings that we had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It lacks the polish, I guess, of anything that coming out of the MCU.
Yeah.
But we expect that, like, it's fine, right? Like, you don't need that kind of polish. You don't need like the kind of like Feige directed unit, union of all things within a single universe. I think what Gunn has done with the franchise has really perked it up. And if they continue in this vein, kind of this like hyper violent, gory, tongue in cheek,
Mm.
with the occasional splatter of like some really deep character exploration,
Yeah.
and some very very deep cuts into just comic book canon and lore in general. I think like there's a lot to look forward to moving
Mm-hmm.
forward for that. I do think that like something like Suicide Squad, in just like its tone, its feel, and just how well it's been doing in the box office, does
Mm-hmm.
signal the death of the Snyderverse, in my opinion.
A little bit. Yeah.
And no offense to guys who love the Snyderverse and want that to come back. There might be a place for that, but I think moving forward, this particular outing from Gunn, and all the minor villains of the DC universe, signals a big direction change.
With the upcoming Flash film, of course, confirmed to be starring Michael Keaton and a few other people, right? Like
Yeah.
it's clear that DC has always had a more thorough handle on the multiverse than Marvel has, which is just starting to dip its toes into it.
Yep.
I don't see any reason for all these strands of the Snyderverse or the Gunverse or whatever other verse to not be able to coincide simultaneously.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's not diametrically opposed for sure, right?
Mm.
Especially with the way that DC in general over the years have dealt with their multiverse situations and the multiple retcons that have to happen because of multiverse
Mm-hmm.
situations. If anything, all the major multiversal crossovers have been the biggest kind of like hitliner events across the
Mm-hmm.
years, right? Whether it's New 52, or whether or not it's Blackest Night. I mean, like
Yeah.
any of those singularly drove sales for DC kind of through the roof during the
Mm-hmm.
point in time they were released. So can they do it in film? I don't see why not. I don't know if there is a lot of work to be done when you're trying to do multiversal stuff, and where Doctor Strange is going to take it for the MCU has a very firm basis for the main timeline already, which I think makes it less confusing.
Mm-hmm.
With the way DC is jumping into it, it may be a bit confusing for people who aren't like hardcore DC fans and readers of the comic books and have followed through everything since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's promising. And I mean, like, honestly, I still think Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is still a joy to see on screen, and if she
Mm.
continues to be around, she's going to continue to make money for DC for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think the upcoming Flashpoint film is obviously going to be DC, the main DC filmverse version of MCU's Loki,
Hmm.
which I don't think they're particularly caring about putting such hard rules in the multiverse. They're just gonna let different directors do different things,
Yeah.
and if they want to explain it, you can just like wave your hand and say it takes place in another universe and don't care about continuity.
Hmm.
And I think that might be the best way for DC to go, lah. They are very rough and tumble and messy as it is, and with the multiverse, it allows them an excuse to have messy continuity issues and just let them do the most fun things possible. With this Suicide Squad, I think it's kind of the epitome of that. When you let a director really kind of let loose,
Yeah.
don't just tell him like, you know what, you don't have to care about continuity. It's fine. Just do whatever you want. So he creates this gritty, intense war movie that's also tongue in cheek. I think the action is quite inspired. There's all manner of high stakes twists and turns and betrayals and deceptions, and those elements are then generously lathered with Gunn's vulgar, belligerent, wild sense of humor, which is also offered, to the spectacular cast. Idris Elba and John Cena are particularly good as rival assassins Bloodsport and Peacemaker. Sylvester Stallone as King Shark,
Oh man.
in a role kind of directly inspired by the Harley Quinn cartoon,
Yeah.
is really good as well. Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag is thankfully spared from the cheesy lines he was forced to work with in David Ayer's movie, and is finally someone kind of worth rooting for.
Yeah.
His dynamic with Margot Robbie, as you mentioned, as Harley Quinn, is the highlight of the movie. And speaking of Harley, the film is by far, I think, Margot Robbie's best turn as Harley Quinn.
Oh yeah.
She's very on point here. If there is any weak point to be found, it kind of just lies in the one-dimensional antagonists. But
Yeah,
other than that, I felt that it was, hilarious, gratuitous, all those things. Like, I liked it quite a bit. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like as far as is is revealing the villain actually spoiler?
Mm, there are like posters of him, and etc. Like, James Gunn has given interviews about it. So,
Okay,
you,
okay,
you all know that in fact in the opening scene, in the setup to the heist, right?
yeah,
They were given a briefing by Amanda Waller, and you already shown the villain, Starro.
yeah,
So I don't think it's a surprise. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I felt like that a lot could have been done with Starro, but
Mm,
given such a big cast and like kind of wanting to explore a bit more about with the world building or the plot setting in this particular case, as well as like the recruitment montage, etc., etc. They don't have enough time for that.
mm-hmm,
But Starro is such a fascinating kind of like villain to begin with. Interesting take on trying to humanize him because like from my memory at least, right? My first introduction to Starro was the DC animated universe's one off for when Starro took over Superman. For
yeah,
those of
yeah.
you who remember, that's like old Superman with the goatee,
Mm.
who was basically evil.
It's
Yeah,
probably the most famous Superman story.
yeah, yeah. I love, love, love that one shot. And like that was kind of my introduction to Starro, even before I kind of like dived into its origins and so on and so forth. But it's a pretty deep cut, right? As far as where it stands within the DC universe lore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like it got a fair treatment. It could have been more, but I mean, you only got so much time.
I was speaking more to the human villains, the
Oh.
Maltesian villains, who should have been humanized more than Starro was. Starro was obviously more of a side gag, lah. But like there's only so much you can do to humanize a starfish, which I totally understand. I'm
Yep.
gonna let it go. But the human villains, I felt, were the one-dimensional antagonists, not Starro.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one was basically just a foil for Harley to show off, and the other
Yep.
one was like, your run of the mill dictator
Mm,
wannabe.
Yeah,
Uh,
evil general, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but it's all just kind of played for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a situation in which the big baddies of the greater world have to fight these kind of like small time baddies,
Yep.
if you don't want to take the time to flesh them out, I'm okay with that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a big deal, especially given that this is Gunn's first outing with the franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it continues to build up over subsequent Suicide Squad films, I'm good with that too. And yeah, I mean, Suicide Squad has a very very long catalog of people they fight against, of which some are extremely extremely interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let this one pass just because like it was fun enough, right? It I think as far as one dimensional as they were, they served their purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I really needed from it.
Yeah, yeah. Overall, like leading up to your rating, what are your final thoughts on the Suicide Squad?
Uh, I mean, it's definitely a romp. It gave me everything that I expected Gun to do. Gave me
Mm,
everything that I'm looking from, a franchise like Suicide Squad, with its entire history, in the comic books.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like just I don't know, giving Margot Robbie time to breathe as Harley
Mm-hmm.
Quinn, giving like Idris Elba like these insane lines. Like this is an Academy Award winner delivering
Mm-hmm.
the most unimaginable lines that you never thought he would with such like finesse, and then like
Yeah,
squaring him up against John Cena.
yeah.
It's really quite something. I mean, I've always stood by the fact that I think like Bautista has been the actor, wrestler turned actor to kind of look
Mm-hmm.
out for. But Cena did a very, very good job. Like I got nothing to complain about that. And we'll see whether that leads into his own series as
HBO
Peacemaker.
Max.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Looks good. That's the one bit of continuity that there was in the Suicide Squad, lah. And overall, I also felt, it was this kind of vulgar, unhinged, heartfelt, and very ludicrously fun film. If you like the energy of a Doom Patrol or Legends of
Oh
Tomorrow or the
yeah.
Harley Quinn series, you definitely like this as well. And that's kind of the lane that DC seems to be more successful in
Hmm.
than the other comic companies. Um, One final shout out to Viola Davis, who
Oh
finally gets
yeah.
to be horrifying as Amanda Waller. Like you never quite felt the coldness or the evil or the do anything it takes gray area of Amanda Waller until you see this Amanda Waller
Oh
who is just
yeah.
foaming at the mouth and just doesn't give a fuck, you know. Yeah, great job on Viola Davis for that one. So I would rate this 7 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, it's a 7 out of 10 for me as well.
Nice. Okay, so pretty good DC outing.
Uh-huh.
Probably the best DC film in the last couple of years. Moving on from one WB thing to another WB thing. And weirdly enough, all of them showed up in Space Jam 2, which I can't believe I'm talking about again. Let's talk about Rick and Morty, which is back for season 5.
Yep.
And boy, do I have some bummer thoughts about season 5.
Yeah.
Now, before like the very voracious Rick and Morty fandom kind of jump on me, I would like to begin by saying that I think the show does deserve its legendary reputation amongst the geeks out there.
Yep.
I think for the majority of the previous 4 seasons, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, I think have proven to be absolutely ingenious writers, constantly delivering these audaciously creative, outrageously hilarious, mind-bendingly meta episodes. At its most ambitious, it continues to deconstruct tropes and upend conventions at every turn.
Mhm.
Like this show is juvenile humor and deranged adventure paired with genius level mockery of every sci-fi trope known to man.
Yeah.
Take episode 2 of the season, for example, which was an instant classic and one of the greatest episodes that this series has ever done.
Yeah.
It featured the concept of a clone war taken to the farthest extreme it can go, kind of scathingly showing you why the overused concept is so fun and so silly at the same time. It was
Yeah.
sheer brilliance. Or take episode 8, which was the rare Rick and Morty episode to feature supremely emotional stakes as it parodies Charlie Kaufman's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind to explore Rick's friendship with Bird Person and therefore examine Rick's flaws and Rick's selfishness through a very different, more poignant, more grounded lens. That being said, barring the highlights, the couple of highlights in the episodes that I just mentioned,
Yeah.
there kind of comes a point when being clever for the sake of being clever starts to wear thin with most of the episodes. The kind of blasé nothing matters in sci-fi approach and nerds are stupid for thinking it does. It's kind of cool sometimes, especially when the writers are being so smart and funny and incisive
Mhm.
about what they're deconstructing. The problem is with this season, most of the episodes are so rarely smart or funny or incisive.
Yeah.
With the exception of episodes 2 and 8, the majority of season 5 feels lackluster and uninspired, with the writers kind of lazily relying on absurdist, high concept ideas and cheap snarkiness
Mhm.
without putting in any effort into delivering any sort of real storytelling depth to keep me invested.
Yeah.
I mean, conceptually, does an episode that fuses gangster movie tropes with Voltron tropes sound fascinating? Or how about hell demons who are fueled by Jerry's cringiness, or the goddamn turkey episode? Like,
Oh.
yeah, they do kind of work on a stoner writers kind of bantering in a room kind of level, but in a execution, they're very thin jokes that don't go beyond your references. Do you agree with my take on season 5 in general?
Yeah, I think like we're not hating on Rick and Morty in any measure, but they've set
Yeah.
a very high bar over the last 4 seasons, right? The first three being like absolutely spectacular,
Yeah.
and all of them have good episodes all throughout, and then like phenomenal like standout episodes,
Yeah.
that are memorable to this day.
Hmm.
What season 5 struggles with in general, I think, is that it's the first time we haven't gotten a real through line,
Mm.
and I'm wondering if that's it has to do with the fact that they were booked for like what was it, 75 episodes at a go,
Yeah.
right? Instead of like kind of like the seasonal thing that they had from seasons 1 to 4,
Hmm.
and whether or not season 5 feels like they're running out of ideas,
Yeah.
essentially, with the exception of the two episodes that we've talked about.
Hmm.
Um and I think, just looking at the titles, or if you guys have already seen it, you will see that, the 8 out of the 10 episodes for this particular season are all parodies or based upon like ideas of very popular movies, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, you got your references to Evangelion, your to Eternal Sunshine, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Uh, and that feels very lazy,
Mm.
right? I feel like I don't know if this is because this is meant to be a filler season and they're saving up some of the true lines that they've established in seasons 1 to 4. Like Evil Morty, for example, or the Citadels of Rick, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
To kind of like pull through later on.
Mm.
I did read this comment that says like, well, basically from like episode 2 onwards, what we're doing is that um we are following the duplicates, we're following the clones,
Yep.
essentially, on all their like various like um non like crucial side events,
Mm.
which I can subscribe to, but like that still doesn't, it's the case of like anime filler season, really.
Mm.
It is what it really feels like nothing here feels of great consequence, with the
Yes.
exception of episode 8, because it's the first time you get any sort of reference to what has happened before. It gives you a peek into the past and has consequences for the future. And
Yeah.
that, like, that was the only thing that really really hit. As interested as I am at the time of recording, we've still got 2 more episodes that are going to come up, episodes 9 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling Hidzir that like I'm really looking forward to the Samurai Jack episode, just to see what they do with it, right? If they make the art take the art style for a bit, like all of that, I think just on the surface aesthetic fan level, I would be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But like one episode with consequence and great storytelling, and one episode with great concept and satire does not a season make.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of like where I am with season 5. Still in the grand scheme of things, like the franchise is solid.
Yeah.
It's just that season 5 isn't. There's a bar that's been set, and season 5 doesn't meet that bar.
Yep, definitely agree. Definitely agree. I think worst of all, for most of the episodes, barring the two I mentioned, I think I was neither laughing nor being intellectually stimulated. A lot of the joke writing seems to have devolved into later era Simpsons
Oh
or
yeah.
Family Guy, kind of like, oh, you get this reference, don't you? A reference is not a joke.
Yep.
Um, I think in the end, Rick and Morty is it still entertaining? Yeah, it is. I never feel like I wasted my time watching a Rick and Morty episode. I can be disappointed because of the high bar it has,
Yeah.
but I think at its best, it's still clever and fresh and novel. But at its worst, it's not as clever and fresh as novel as it once was. So I think overall, I'll probably give this season a 6 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, it's a yeah, it's a 6 out of 10 for me. I was tempted to give it a 5.5 when I was halfway through the season.
Yeah.
But episode 8 really saved it for me. Not only because Eternal Sunshine is one of my favorite shows, and the fact that, again, right, finally some storytelling, finally some true line with consequence.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the other 2 episodes are gonna add much to that score, very honestly, and unfortunately as well. Yeah, so it's a 6
Mm-hmm.
from me as well.
Definitely. Yeah, so I mean, a little disappointed with Rick and Morty. By no means is it bad, it's just not as good as it once was.
Hmm.
Now I'm gonna dive into the first portion of Quick Hits to talk about 4 titles. First of which is one that is kind of close to my heart. It is Tuca and Bertie Season 2. I felt Netflix's decision to cancel Lisa Hannawalt's animated series
Yeah.
after its premiere season was disappointing and more than a little confusing. The show was very, very good.
Mm.
It perfectly captured, I think, millennial ennui, striking this strong generational chord for those amongst us who work 70-hour weeks on a gig economy, for subpar pay. The show resonated with those of us, who think about mental illness, who fear imminent commitment and intimacy in the digital age. And best of all, I think, it focuses on women, a pair of literal ladybirds, best friends, whose messy lives feel like a breath of fresh air. Lisa Hannawalt's show truly combined her work on BoJack Horseman with the sensibilities of a show like Broad City. Thankfully, though, Adult Swim slash Cartoon Network has saved the show for its second season. And the series continues, to grow in my heart and cement itself as one of the most nuanced sitcoms exploring modern female friendship. Before Tuca and Bertie, I never quite thought that an animated show might dare not only to focus on millennial women, but to draw comedy from taboo issues like workplace harassment,
Hmm.
STIs, mental illness, sobriety, sexual assault. I think like women in general are underrepresented in animation, especially women of color,
Yeah.
making these kinds of stories rare. Hannah Walt's signature sense of this kind of surreal gonzo humor allows the show to continually tackle difficult subjects, with a kind of barrier to it, lah. Like you don't. It's still potent, but you can still be. It's still covered up with absurdism. And season two expands on these themes of female friendship, anxiety, grief, and power. Bertie still struggles with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think season two and most importantly begins to tackle and unpack Tuca as well, focusing on her sobriety and her romantic struggles and her insomnia. Most shockingly, though, this season posits that while Tuca and Bertie's friendship is kind of hashtag goals, but it can also be unhealthily codependent.
Yeah.
Tuca and Bertie offer each other a safety net. So they can be supportive to each other at times, but they can also prevent them from growing individually.
Mm-hmm.
There's always this person that you can turn to. And I think like Ellie Wong and Tiffany Haddish and Steven Yeun as Bertie's boyfriend Speckle, who's kind of having a hell of a year with Minari and Invincible and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And the return of this show, they remain great as voices of these characters. And Lisa Hannah Walt continues to find goofy and silly yet poignant ways to contextualize millennial anxieties and traumas through anthropomorphic flora and fauna.
Mhm.
Yeah. So once again, I'm giving Tuca and Bertie season two an 8 out of 10.
Solid. Solid. It's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man. Next up, I'm going to be talking about a movie that's not opening in Singapore just yet. But I have been able to watch a preview of it. It is opening on September the 23rd at Shaw Theatres and the Projector. It is David Lowery's reimagining of The Green Knight. After being delayed for over a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I think A24's ambitious and visionary retelling of this Arthurian legend, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, has finally arrived, and I'm excited for it if you aren't aware of where it's from. It's
Mhm.
adapted from the epic 14th century Welsh poem. The story follows. By the way, the poem has no recognized author. It's by anonymous. Um, the story follows Sir Gawain, who is an untested knight of King Arthur's Round Table, who recklessly confronts the Green Knight when he interrupts Camelot's Christmas celebrations with a proposal to play a game.
Mhm.
The kind of emerald skin ant-like creature. His challenge is this: anyone who can strike a blow against him must then allow him to return the blow in kind 1 year later.
Okay.
Gawain decides to decapitate the Green Knight with one blow, only to be stunned when the knight reanimates, casually picks up his head, and then he says, "Yeah, see you in 1 year, buddy." Um, and so the year-long countdown to Gawain's doom begins. It is led by career best work from Dev Patel, and the unparalleled, I think, artistic sensibilities of his director David Lowery. This version of the Green Knight is um, a hypnotically mournful rumination on masculinity and temptation and heroism and religion. It's kind of this painterly vision of a medieval time that is both rooted in history and embedded in magic, but also challenges traditional expectations of chivalric stories. For one thing, the headstrong nephew of King Arthur is very unlike what we find in literature. This Sir Gawain is worried he's not destined for greatness. He desperately wants to prove to himself and to prove to others that
Mhm.
he's worthy in the eyes of Arthur and Queen Guinevere. Despite being the son of a witch. Obviously, if you're unfamiliar, his mother is Morgan Le Fay. Yet, for all his pride, drunk Gawain's kind of drunken fallibility and trysts with a prostitute and his cowardice proves that he's not a pure at heart knight. He doesn't meet the chivalry code
Mhm.
at any criteria. And as the daily consequences of his impulsive decision looms near, Gawain must embark upon a journey to the Green Chapel to face his fate. Avoiding his death is not the quest so much as how he chooses to meet his death. Along the perilous trek across the countryside, Gawain must contend with ghosts and giants and thieves and schemers, including a scavenger played by Barry Keoghan, a mysterious young woman, a lord played by Joel Edgerton. Each step of his magic realist path is a test. Trials of temptation and seduction. Each of these steps appraise his doubts and desires to see if his convictions hold true. The quintessential hero's journey here is not a physical one.
Hmm.
So there's literally no action in the film, which some people might scoff at, but
Yeah.
it's more of a mental, spiritual, and emotional one, translated in lush visual detail. I can see already like some casual fans or some critics may point to its glacial pace and loose structure as deficits.
Okay.
But in my opinion, Lowry's poetic storytelling actually, upon reading the poem, matches its source. There are several scenes that that circle back to themes like a rhythmic structure, and unfolding his story in what almost feels like cinematic stanzas that repeat and comment on each other. Gowan's journey becomes this kind of spiral, feeling more and more and more like a dream, and the film gains momentum through a culminative sense of disorientation.
Mhm.
The Green Knights, earthy and enchanting visuals, unpacked both the erotic subtext and the pagan roots of the myth, while exploring themes of mortality, and I don't know what else to say, but like virtueless cloud chasing. This Gowan is, easily can be seen as some sort of social media influencer if he was alive today. But he's kind of grappling with his own inconsequence,
Yeah.
and his own, not living up to what people think of him lah. Like any great work of art or literature, much of the films, I think, breathtakingly abstract sequences are open to different interpretations.
Mhm.
But what comes across clearly is the idea that the Green Knight is the Green Knight, not the movie, but the actual character,
Yeah.
the creature, is a force of nature. It is unjudging, unmoving, and uncaring. Like how we define ourselves and choose to behave in the face of that nature is the question. I think Patel is mesmerizing in his performance here because he embodies the character's uncertainty in that question in many ways. His physical presence is undoubtedly irresistible camera wise, but his ungallant cadence isn't your dad's idea of a brooding or brave knight. He is alarmed, astonished, and aloof and cowardly, and everything is conveyed in his posture and physicality. Gawain is more of a man quavering and at war with his own integrity. The film is filmed entirely in natural light and uses very lo-fi special effects.
Hmm.
And David Lowery's dreary gray deconstruction of this kind of dark fantasy is surreal and really beguilingly beautiful. Like every frame captures an image that's so striking that, like if you pause at any moment, you'll see a scene that belongs in an art exhibition.
Mm.
Likewise, the unsettlingly alien score, the cinematography, the exhaustively detailed costuming and production design is all a tribute to the Green Knight's bold feat of imagination. So those seeking like a typical swords and sorcery adventure might be bored, but I think this unique evocation of the poem asks a lot more of its casual audience due to its kind of languid momentum and kind of unconventional film grammar.
Hmm.
But more attentive viewers will surely, I think, if you pay attention, be spellbound by the sumptuous symbolism and the meditative touch and search for meaning that the film is offering. In my opinion, The Green Knight is a 9 out of 10. So a very highly rated film, one of the best I've ever seen in the year of the year so far. Um,
Ooh.
you you can catch it right now on VOD, or if you want to support your local cinemas, if you live in Singapore, watch it at Shaw Cinemas or the projector when it opens on September the 23rd. What are your thoughts about The Green Knight? You've seen the trailers and all of that. Some of our friends are very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm super excited and I'm super glad to hear a fantastic review. So I'm
Mm.
more than ready to buy my ticket as soon as like it gets out, just to kind of like see that on the big screen. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something that I will really enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. And I'll encourage you to do the same as well. Kind of capping off this section of quick hits, let's talk about Legends of Tomorrow. Praise Bebo. Legends of Tomorrow is still very wild and weird and funny and inventive. Probably the most inventive show and the wildest show and the most fun show of all the Arrowverse shows. I think if Harley Quinn and Watchmen didn't exist, Legends of Tomorrow would easily be the best DC comic book show in existence.
Yep.
As it stands, season 6 continues to be a gem. Delivering episode after episode of fun escapism and super batshit bananas bonkers stories. And the cast is obviously very comfortable with each other, and it's their chemistry that makes this lovable band of C-list heroes so watchable. At the end of last season, Sarah was abducted by aliens, setting the stage for this season's space and alien themed adventures. Not only must the legends save Sarah, but they must also capture various aliens that have been let loose across time and space, which propels the episodic adventures this season. As the team obviously have to capture or kill these aliens.
Hmm.
So they travel to various timelines. Like in one episode, they travel to 2045 to catch an alien that has entered a futuristic singing competition.
Yep.
And in order to keep him from winning the singing competition and altering the timeline, they decide not to kill him, but to enter the competition themselves.
Uh huh.
Yeah, the climax of that episode is like Zari and the alien making it to the finals and competing with original pop songs that they've wrote. This is that kind of show. There's a fully animated Disney musical themed episode.
Yep.
Rory gets pregnant this season when an alien lays eggs in him. A lot of cool, insane shit happens per usual. Although, like, on a slight downside, like in terms of consistency, season 6 is probably not as strong as the previous 4 seasons. With some episodes feeling more filler than others. But when the story is lagging, I think the show always falls back on the super endearing group dynamics, which is why I'm still giving Legends of Tomorrow season 6 a 7 out of 10.
Ooh.
Uh,
I,
yeah.
I haven't caught up yet, so like it looks like there's a fair bit to dive into.
Yeah. It's probably the weakest season next to season 1, but by
Okay.
no means is it a weak season.
Okay. 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 Cool.
And finally, for this round of quick hits, I'm going to be talking about Free Guy. Free Guy is a movie starring Ryan Reynolds.
Hmm.
He plays a friendly bank teller who discovers that he's actually an NPC background player in an open world video game. So he's unsatisfied with the reputation of his daily routine. He chooses to break free of his programming, quits his job, and decides to play as a hero in Free City. This earns the attention of a pair of programmers in the real world who think that he might be the key to unlocking the game's most closely guarded secrets. Combining a clever concept alongside sweet self-aware humor and a charming cast. As I mentioned, Ryan Reynolds is there, Killing Eve's Jodie Comer is there. Free Guy is really frivolous fun at the end of the day. Is it particularly original? I mean, not really.
Yeah.
It's kind of a modern day Wreck-It Ralph meets Ready Player One meets The Truman Show. With Ryan Reynolds acting as Ryan Reynolds once again, he doesn't really have any other character to play. It's the usual cracking wise, wink wink, nudge nudge meta jokes kind of Ryan Reynolds.
Hmm.
That being said, it does also suffer from like this kind of like Deadpool 2 syndrome, where the jokes aren't actually jokes so much as random references. Um, all in all, though, I think it's really inoffensive fun. It's upbeat, it's wholesome, it's digestible. A really inoffensive popcorn blockbuster. So I'm giving this a 6 out of 10.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And now we're diving into Isaac's turn.
Yeah.
He's going to be talking about Anime Corner. You're going to begin with returning anime series, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just gonna do like a quick kind of PSA.
Yep.
For everyone who has been listening to the rest of our anime corners, just want to let you guys know that To Your Eternity has just wrapped up with episode 20. If you
Mm.
haven't caught up or you have been putting it off because you would like to binge everything at one go, which is a tall order, we will warn you. To
Mm.
binge the whole all 20 episodes at one go. It is finally complete, and yeah, it's available for you to stream at your Crunchyroll and etc., wherever you want to find your anime.
Yep.
Tokyo Revengers likewise has also just wrapped up. Its 24 series episode. It was one of our honorable mentions from last season.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, honestly, in any other season, this would have been one of my top five, but last season was just so stacked. So you
Stack
can go
too.
ahead and catch up on those. This season, for this summer season, which traditionally has been the more like summer blockbusters, right? Summer season usually is the one with the really big hitters and all of that. We do have
Mm-hmm.
some returning anime that have been very enjoyable and some fan favorites as well. of
Okay.
which our favorite slime is back. So Slime Dataken second season part 2 has started, and it's continuing, and we um continue to follow our favorite slime, as well as the denizens of the Jura Tempest nation, as they kind of like um, you know go through life trying to navigate this place where you have sentient monsters who are banding together to create their own country.
Yeah.
um, it has gotten ridiculous in the best
Okay.
possible way. I fucking love this show.
Cool.
Just because the way that they scale power is so satisfying. It's so
Uh,
ridiculous and so satisfying and so OP in so many ways that it's just thoroughly enjoyable in a kind of like no brainer way.
mm,
I love it. So that's back. If you guys are big fans, just letting you know that the part 2 of the second season is out. Also, season 2 of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which is immensely popular in Japan and in many other parts of the world. I don't know if I've ever covered this on an anime corner necessarily, but it is one of my guilty pleasures on the side. Season 2 just gives you even more hijinks than season 1, with
mm.
some deepening relationships between the two main characters and a few more like new side characters as well. If you're a big fan of that, please go ahead and check that out as well.
Okay.
Now,
Nice.
for the third returning anime, it's Magia Record, Puella Magi Magadoka Magica Side Story, Season 2, The Eve of Awakening.
What a
Uh,
mouthful.
yeah. So I talked briefly about season 1 of this, where basically it's a Madoka Magica sequel, adjacent quel, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
that is set in the Madoka Magica universe. Season
Yeah.
1 was a bit of a disappointment for me because they decided to go the route in which they did the whole slice of life thing within this very um honored, respected, and well placed anime, right? Like Magi Madoka is one
Mm.
of the best anime of all time, right? It's easily S tier, one of my favorite anime of all time. So I was a bit disappointed that they went with the slice of life route in season 1. However, in season 2,
Yeah.
um, I think they're going like you kind of back to form in terms of like giving us all that we want in these really kind of dark exploration of the idea of these magical girls and where their powers come from. And because they set it up with the slice of life and getting to know these characters,
Mm.
and well, so if you follow through with it, caring about them, all that, the drama further complicates and the plot thickens as we go into season 2, something that
Mm.
I did not expect them to do, because it really did feel in season 1 that this was just going to be a feel good story with the flavor of Magica.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, season 2, The Eve of Awakening, has surprised me on many levels. Produced again by Shaft, uh, one of my favorite production companies. Just like it's flashy, it's getting really interesting, and it only could be done based upon a season that I didn't give much credit for. So
Ah, okay.
yeah, it really is. Uh, it's a step forward and like an improvement in so many ways, and very bold move, honestly, to have like an entire season set up, much like we get for Western TV series, I guess,
Okay.
but very rare in anime.
Okay. Okay.
All
I
right,
understand.
so yeah, so that's the three kind of returning ones that I've highlight. Now jumping in to the new anime this particular season that I want to highlight.
Yeah.
um you may have heard me complaining over the last few episodes of Genre and All Behold about like how spoiled we were last season with the
D-
spring season, uh
definitely. Yeah.
with this big four that just came out swinging, impossible contenders for anime of the year.
Yeah.
So everything in comparison feels mediocre. However,
Mm-hmm.
I am happy to report that there is at least one candidate I think that could run for anime of the year contender, and
Mm-hmm.
that anime is called Sonny Boy. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, Sonny Boy is basically okay. The premise is 36 students find themselves in their school building drifting in a void like dimension suddenly. While this is happening, they develop supernatural powers, and this growing sense of detachment the longer time they kind of spend within this space itself. The
Okay.
student council, is trying to impose order as they are wont to do, right? But end up clashing with other students who now have special abilities and who rebel against their strict control. This conflict leads them to discover that this entire space that the school currently inhabits has its own set of rules, and you need to follow them in order to stay alive. Um, and every time you kind of like discover and or break a rule, the rules change.
Oh,
So it's a whole kind of series of puzzles as they kind of figure it out. I would best describe this as a oh man, I think of it as a Japanese anime shonen take on Lord of the Flies,
okay,
but it is
interesting.
at the same time perhaps the most abstract, minimalist, surrealist, psychological character drama that I've seen this year.
Interesting. Okay.
And it is quite a mindfuck. It is slow. There is a lot of emptiness, and that just plays in with the entire kind of like um look and feel of what it's about. Like a lot of the animation is of the school building just set against this kind of black expanse where you don't know what's kind of out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you what results as part of that is this amazing minimalist aesthetic, but the presentation is anything but minimalist.
What do
Uh
you mean by minimalist?
it's very sparse, right? There's a lot of empty space. In fact, there's a lot of use of very interesting use of negative space on multiple levels, whether it's um missing spaces in the visuals itself, right? How the characters
Oh,
interact with the actual void itself,
gotcha.
how the
Okay.
actual spaces within the school interact with the void itself. So on a visual level, that in and of itself is very compelling and very very curious and surprising at the same time. Then at the
Yep.
same time, dialogue is sparse.
Okay.
Fairly, there's a lot of space between, kind of like characters' thoughts and all of that, giving the ideas that they are airing or the conflicts that are taking place verbally a lot of room to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the extremely kind of minimal musical score as well that just adds to this overall feeling of like emptiness and detachment that feeds
Mm.
into where this is all going. Um, yeah, and it is very curious. It feels strange. It is slow and it is glacial to a point whereby I personally think, myself as a viewer, is that there's a lot of space for you to kind of project what your
Mm.
own thoughts about what they should do are like, what they are thinking are like, and all of that. And that creates a very kind of unique space that isn't really explored in anime so
Okay.
far. And yeah, so like there's a whole ton of things kind of going on at this time. I will say that this is not for everyone. But then again, Odd Taxi isn't for everyone either.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna highly recommend Sonny Boy if you're a big fan of just art house like anime style stuff.
Yeah.
This ranks up there with the big four that we were talking about last season. In my
Nice.
personal opinion, it has been very divisive. I don't think I've seen a middle of the line score as far as reviews go for this anime. It's either a
Yeah.
9 or 10 or 1
Oh.
right now. So I'm on the higher side of things. I really enjoyed this so far.
Mm-hmm.
None of the mystery has kind of been dispelled or any conclusion with that as of yet. Yeah, but like the haters really hate it and the fans are like absolutely jubilant over the fact that this exists, and I am one of those few.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, I'll definitely check this out as well to form my own opinions. But I tend to lean more towards your aesthetic taste as well. So
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna like it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sony Boy, please check that out. So that's
Yeah.
definitely, I think, in contention for anime of the year. If not within the, I probably top 10. At least, at very least. The rest of them
Mm-hmm.
are strong recommendations, just because I really enjoyed them, of which a few of them are. But the next one we're going to talk about is the case study of Vanitas. Um,
Okay.
so, for those of you that heard us talk about Mars Red and kind of ran a rave about that, we have yet another period piece
Vampires.
about vampires. Yes, but this time,
Nice.
this time it's a bit more magical, a bit less military. In fact,
Ah.
so we follow the titular character Vanitas, who is scorned by his fellow vampires for being born under a blue moon. And in his isolation, growing up, he becomes kind of withdrawn and afraid. Um, but being born on a blue moon has blessed him with a cursed grimoire called the Book of Veritas, and one day he's going to use it to kind of save his kind. So this is set in 19th century Paris.
Okay.
So the setting and the background art and the costuming is just like solid. It's like on point. It's very very
Okay.
good. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And yeah, that's essentially the story. Like it's a bit pedestrian as far as it goes, but the setting itself, the artwork, done by Bones, is like spectacular, and it has a very very solid like period inspired soundtrack that I'm absolutely digging. The fight scenes are inventive and flashy and quick, much in the same way Master is it, but with a completely different kind of look for that.
Mm.
And here, basically, that is the adventures of Vanitas as he's trying to save the ungrateful, unwilling, uncooperative secret vampire clan that exists in Paris at this time.
Why was being born under a blue moon make you an outcast?
Yeah, so you don't they don't actually explain that until like in the middle of the anime.
Oh, okay. Is it like a racial thing? I don't know.
I
Like,
have no idea.
okay.
Apparently, it has to do with a prophecy that was kind of like foretold.
I
Uh,
see. Okay,
yeah,
okay,
which
okay.
leads to
Yeah.
him like having like receiving extra powers on top of him being. Yeah,
Mm.
so with the grimoire and all of that, it gives him extra powers that
It's
allows
more
him
of
to save.
a jealousy thing, lah.
Maybe, may oh well, there's a bit of that. There's a few
Mm.
characters where he has this very kind of like strained relationship with because of that. Some people just straight up hate him because he's born under a blue moon, and it's not like there's no necessarily outward manifestation of the fact that he was born under a blue moon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very well explained. But
Okay.
man, it's a very very good looking anime, and I'm here for it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that's Case Study of Vanitas. I'm also going to talk about maybe this is my guilty pleasure anime for this season for sure, and it's
Okay.
called How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. So I talked to Hits about this and Chris about this some time back when I first discovered it.
Yeah.
This is your run of the mill isekai starting out story, right? Kazuya
Mm-hmm.
Soma is an aspiring civil servant who's left all alone when his grandfather dies. One fine day, he gets summoned to a whole different world, and to a very small country in on a continent that is basically battling the invasion of demons. From there, as a hero, so he's got no, he's not like he doesn't have a magic sword or everything like that, but he is armed with a lot of knowledge about how to, deal with civil matters.
Mm.
These are this and he uses that to solve problems and get the entire country's finances. And there's talk about like supply chains and agriculture, and if you guys have been listening, you know that we are fans of like anime that
Yeah.
deal with like all this like nation building and the politics and all of that.
Yeah.
It is definitely not anywhere near the finesse of Spice and Wolf, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or even the grand scale of Demon King and Hero.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just enough here for to keep me kind of like addicted. Like throw in the fact that he, as this kind of like millennial isekai hero, is fully aware of like his status, right, as a realist as well. As
Mm.
an isekai hero, so there's a lot of like references to like Yu-Gi-Oh and to like other sort of like isekai stories that are vastly popular in Japan as well. So it makes for a very very fun romp in which you learn a bit about agriculture, about politics, about the nature of war and how all of that kind of plays out,
Yeah.
about supply chains and like sea trade, just like tidbits here and there that are factually sound, very very
Okay.
honestly, and very very informative and educational, um, and works out in surprising ways, despite the fact that the actual premise itself isn't new. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
been done before. But yeah, it's feel good enough for me to want to keep watching and learn while I'm at it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Like
So
if you're a fan of like Dune or The Wire, you kind of realize that what it takes to run a nation or a world or a universe
oh
is
yeah,
not like great noble men, or you need an administrator.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
a good detail-oriented administrator, and this sounds like right up my alley. Though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like it's silly and it's fun. Again, like it doesn't give a deep dive, but like hell, as far as like the isekais we've gotten over the last couple of years, like this is the first one in a long time that hits the right spot for me. As far as that
Mm.
kind of like nerdy, administrative side of things, as strange as it is to say,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it scratches that itch for sure.
Awesome.
Next up, I'm gonna talk about Remake Our Life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we follow 28-year-old Kyoya Hashiba, who is he's basically an engineer by training who left his office job to pursue a career in the video game industry. And his internship doesn't go well, leaves him unemployed, forcing him to move back with his parents.
Okay.
And he has this kind of like additional love hate relationship, or rather this strange relationship with what is dubbed as the platinum generation, who are members of his peer, of his year, of his batch, who are artists who have risen to kind of the top of their game, of their craft, and it causes him deep regret. For his
Mm-hmm.
decision to attend a traditional university instead of the arts college that he had always wanted to go to.
Ah, okay.
So, regretting all of that, he believes there's no second chance in life. And one fine day, as all of these time travel things go, he wakes up and finds himself 10 years into the past. And
Mm.
he's given the option. So instead of choosing business school like he originally had, he decides to, for once, pursue his passions and attends the University of Art. And there he meets his classmates who will eventually become the Platinum Generation.
Ah.
One of which is his future boss in the video game company who hires him as an intern.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, there's actually, yeah, it's a fairly complicated semi romance drama about second chances and a very interesting look into what art school is like and what the art
Mm.
industry eventually becomes for people who pursue that in Japan. So there is a fair bit of like information there that I've never kind of been exposed to. Not at this level at least. The characters are memorable, they're quirky, they're endearing almost immediately. And yeah, it's about a man getting a second chance to rediscover what he's always wanted to do and discovering himself in the process of that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that is Remake Our Life. Solid stuff. I'm quite enjoying it just for the feel good factor and the fact that, um, despite it being generally slice of life, the time travel aspect of it isn't just like shown aside or swept under the carpet. There are consequences to the fact that he is traveling back in time, in addition to
Mm.
the fact that he already had a very complex relationship with his artistic peers or the creators of his generation with the Platinum Generation, how
Mm-hmm.
that translate as a man who has gone 10 years back into his past with all the knowledge that he has accumulated and the feelings that he has developed from that and how that plays out in his current relationships is very well written and fairly fascinating to explore.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Finally, I'm going to talk about the Aquatope on White Sand,
Okay.
which is my pick for the most kind of like off left feel. No, left field is not really. This is basically my feel good pick for this season, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we follow a rejected idol who finds herself on a plane to Okinawa instead of returning home to avoid the huge pity party waiting for her back at her village.
Mm-hmm.
And so she aimlessly wanders around in Okinawa until she stumbles upon the Gama Gama Aquarium, which is an aging tourist spot that's on the verge of going down. There's no visitors there, and it's really really run down. But somehow, while she spends time wandering these empty halls with all the fishes and these very very beautifully animated scenes of like, it feels a lot of like that Romeo and Juliet moment, where they're standing across from each other
Oh,
in,
okay.
in the
Okay.
aquarium. Yeah, like there's a lot of that, which I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she feels like there's something special about this place that calls out to her, and so she
Mm-hmm.
eventually teams up with the director of this aquariums uh granddaughter, who is a high school student, who is
Yeah.
absolutely obsessed with fish and sea
Okay.
life, right? So much so that she submits things like, how to care for squid, like notes for one of her math assignments.
Okay.
And the two of them come together to find a way to keep the aquarium going and the magic that she has discovered there of it and the struggles there in. It is a very calm and well paced and very soothing anime about learning to heal from the rejection of uh, one of your biggest dreams in life, right? And how the dedication of yourself to perhaps a purpose other than what you were looking for may be exactly what you need in a time when you're tempted to look inward.
Mm.
So it really does lean into that very, very heavily. And I know that's not for everyone. That's not what they want an anime to be. I was surprised by how taken I was by this. This is not going to be for everybody. I'm going to say though that you should give it one episode. Don't need rule of three. Just give it one episode, and I think you'll immediately be able to tell whether or not you'll be into it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the Aquatope on White Sand for
Nice.
me.
Okay.
Honorable mentions really quickly before I hand it back to Hits for the second part of Quick Hits. I'm
Yep.
going to talk about Tsukimichi, which is Tsukimichi Moonlight Fantasy, which is another isekai with a slight twist on the premise. So our protagonist is our protagonist is essentially he is the offspring of two isekai protagonists who came to our Earth.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right, so he's the son, and his parents made a promise with the goddess that brought them to our Earth, which is the moon goddess, Sugimichi,
Mm-hmm.
that they would give up eventually over time what was most important to them. And lo and behold, that was him, the son. So he gets sent back to the original world that they came from, having
Okay.
absolutely no idea of what he is like or what he's supposed to do. And he has to report to the other goddess who's in charge of the original world that they were from, who actually doesn't give a shit about him. And decides to just chuck him onto the world with like the smallest of possible blessings that she has, which is the ability to comprehend all languages, which is OP as fuck. Despite the fact that she's dismissive about it, and
Yep.
yeah, basically that's where his adventure kind of begins. What's interesting about this is there's a very heavy anthropological slant to this, so he ends up being cast because this malevolent goddess thinks he's too ugly or too plain looking to be a hero, so he gets
Mm-hmm.
cast onto the world where the monsters are. So he
Okay.
starts his entire adventure by learning the culture and language and traditions of the orcs,
Mm.
and then it keeps kind of like going to like all the different kind of monsters and kind of learning about that. Fascinating kind of look at um a very different kind of point of view as far as like fantasy isekai goes. In
Yep.
addition to that, there's a very not convoluted, but there's a very complex system of magic that he needs to learn, that is fairly well thought out. Very, very honestly, like from a game designer point of view, like that would be a fascinating kind of magic system to look into. But yeah,
Mm.
he has to kind of like uncover that piece by piece because no one person that he has spoken to like has like all the answers about that. So while he's learning about like the culture and the people or the various denizens within like this crapshoot of the land. In this
Mm-hmm.
fantasy world, he's trying to piece together a way to send himself back home through a very it's like archaeological and anthropological as well, and it's very,
Mm.
very well written for that. It's not amazing in terms of like the fight sequences or the character building necessarily, but
Mm.
just like its approach is the interesting twist to the isekai premise and its approach to the story itself and the world building is something that really caught my attention, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
continuing to watch this just because it's something really different.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Next up, I'm going to talk about life lessons with Uramichi-Oniisan, which is basically for fans of anyone who has watched Zetsubo Sensei. And it is about a former gymnast who has been hired to run like public access TV low budget children's shows.
Okay.
And his struggle to kind of keep it together together with this crew of miserable adults who have absolutely no like desire to live anymore or be a part of this like crap TV show.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of like dry wit and all of that. Coupled with the fact that there are other former gymnasts who act as mascots who are absolutely terrified of Uramichi, who is their senpai, or
Yep.
gymnastic senpai, and the fact that these kids are precocious and sarcastic and like absolutely have no filter and are just giving him shit all the time off screen, off camera rather, and
Okay.
it makes for incredibly funny comedy, just about being in a place that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only complaint for life lessons with Uramichi-Oniisan is that it's not the animation isn't great. Like it's just slightly better than what we got with Way of the House Husband, right? It's not PowerPoint exactly, but it's barely animated, if I could put it that way. Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
like it's animated enough for the visual gags to have like fantastic comedic timing.
Mm-hmm.
That and the fact that there are a lot of very good Japanese voice actors on this, and their delivery is just like spot on. Even if you don't understand Japanese, even if you're just reading the subtitles, which are very well done, I have to say, it translates very well. Still, it's good for a laugh, right? And again, if you really enjoy Zetsubo Sensei, then this is right up your alley.
Nice.
Last one for the bit is the great Jahy will not be defeated. Basically, for anybody who has watched The Devil is a Part Timer and Love the Devil is a Part Timer, this is for you.
Yeah.
Same premise. The second in command of the demon realm, the demon king's aide, Jahy, gets transported to modern day world, and he has to kind of figure out what the hell is going on. And so
Mm.
she works part time to pay for her living expenses, and so on and so forth. It's been really funny. It's just like a bit of a gender swap from the Demon Lord as part timer.
Ah.
And yeah, it's funny. It has a fair bit of fan service. Fair warning for any of you that don't like that. But yeah, it's we haven't gotten a conclusion to the Devil is a part timer. So
Mm-hmm.
like Jahi like feels a nice kind of sweet spot for anybody wanting more of that story.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it for me for Anime Corner. Hope you guys there's something that I've talked about that appeals to you. Please go ahead and check that out on, Crunchyroll or wherever else you decide to watch your anime. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
here in particular that is on Netflix at the moment. However,
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that Sunny Boy and Case Study of Vanitas at very least will be on Netflix at some point in time, given the way that they choose to schedule their catalog. So if you want to hold off, you can go ahead and do that. We are about 9 episodes into the standard season so far, so
Mm-hmm.
you can start watching now, and you won't be too far behind. Or if you want to binge it, then just give it another month or so.
Nice. I'm definitely gonna start jumping into Sunny Boy sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Funimation bought Crunchyroll, right?
Yes. Is it Funimation? S-
Or is it the other way around? Did Crunchyroll buy Funimation? I know they merged.
Yeah, they are. Oh. Was it because okay, no, there were like multiple acquisitions. I think Sony owns all of them at the moment.
Sony owns Funimation, which bought Crunchyroll. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, yeah.
I just looked it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sony owns
So
all of them.
wow, what a library they got right there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna cap it off with the second part of quick hits.
Yep.
I'm gonna begin with M Night Shyamalan's new film, Old, which features another wild concept. It follows a family on a tropical holiday that turns into a horrific nightmare when they become trapped on a secluded beach that somehow causes them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. It's kind of a go for broke Twilight Zone kind of riff
Yep.
about a beach where time passes so fast that a 6 year old in the morning will go through puberty by lunch, and a grandmother in the first act has almost no chance of being around in the third. It's the sort of unsettling idea that can kind of trigger a wave of existential anxieties. Yet, in Shyamalan's hands, it all ends up being very silly. Shyamalan opts for a hurried, yet impressively perverse series of cheap thrills that emphasize the body horror of aging
Huh.
over the more profound terror of feeling the years pass by. The result is a silly yet well acted. piece of schlock that's intense and chaotic, but at the same time also clumsy and about as subtle as a hammer. It kind of makes me long for more psychological suspense that we got from Shyamalan's earlier work.
Hmm.
As always, the guy takes huge swings with a unique concept. The execution is uneven to say the least. I would have given this as a 6 out of 10 if not for the twist at the end, which is fairly horrible. So I'm giving this a
Uh,
5 out of 10.
oh,
Next,
okay.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Shyamalan has his hits and misses, more misses than hits these days.
yeah.
Speaking of, you notice like I do not like these last few titles, which is why I've like put it at the back.
Yeah.
And next up, I'm going to be talking about Disney's latest blockbuster, the Jungle Cruise. It's inspired by Disneyland's famous theme park ride, of course. Jungle Cruise is an Amazon adventure starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson as a wisecracking boat captain, Frank Wolf, and Emily Blunt as an intrepid researcher named Dr. Lily Houghton. Lily has traveled from London to the Amazon jungle and enlisted Frank's services in order to uncover an ancient tree with unparalleled healing abilities.
Hmm.
It supposedly possesses the power to change the future of medicine. So, they are thrust on this epic quest together. The duo encounter innumerable dangers and supernatural forces, all lurking in the Amazon rainforest. Sadly, Jungle Cruise is the kind of thrill ride that feels like it was created by some sort of blockbuster generator algorithm.
Yeah.
It is an untaxing summer popcorn movie for the whole family that won't engage you mentally or emotionally. It is harmless, I guess,
Hmm.
but it's also very derivative. It's 4 out of 10 for me. Finally, I'm going to be talking about Reminiscence, which is a new sci-fi movie from Westworld co-creator Lisa Joy. It stars Hugh Jackman
Oh.
as Nick Bannister,
Hmm.
a private investigator of the mind, who helps his clients access lost memories. However, his life is upended when he takes on a new client named Me, played by Rebecca Ferguson. A simple matter of lost and found memories becomes more dangerous when he uncovers a violent conspiracy within her mind. All in all, the movie is aiming for a classical film noir detective story with some pretty unoriginal sci-fi concepts that you've seen a million times before
Hmm.
in Eternal Sunshine or Inception and stuff like that. Despite some really really good acting performances, Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson are excellent. It has a cool setting because it's set in the near future of the sunken coast of future Miami.
Hmm.
It has some decent action set pieces. The movie is ultimately boring is the word. It's really boring and hollow. So yeah, this is a 3 out of 10 for me. Give it a miss. And yeah, that wraps it up for quick hits. That was a really good
Oh,
one.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna jump into The Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf, which is now on Netflix. It came out last week.
yeah,
Yeah. So, big fan of The Witcher. Big fan of the
yeah.
the games in particular, and I actually really enjoyed the series. Um,
Season 2 is coming soon.
Season 2 is coming soon, and apparently we're going to be following someone different. So
Mm-hmm.
we shall see how that turns out. But essentially, Nightmare of the Wolf is a sequel, and we follow Gerald's mentor and fellow witcher Vesemir. It starts out with him kind of saving a noble child, learning that he's a bit of a huge asshole,
Mm-hmm.
very much, and apparently so are a lot of witches of his time.
Okay.
I'm not going to go too much into the entire thing in terms of its story and all of that. Safe to say that I really, really enjoyed this. First and foremost, because I think from something from the Witcher franchise, Nightmare of the Wolf being a 1.5 hour long movie, animated movie, is um it's straight line. There's no mental gymnastics that I need to navigate like multiple timelines necessarily. There's a fair bit of flashbacks, which I think is okay, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing compared to like the jumping here and there that we got with the Witcher series proper on Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, helmed the main production studio is Studio Mer, which gave us, of course, Dota's Dragon's Blood, which we reviewed very well before, and Keeper of the Age of Wonder Beach, which we've also reviewed before. And then true to form again, like it has the same kind of like look and feel. The fight scenes are snappy and smart. The musical score is pretty phenomenal, and very very much in line with whatever we've gotten from the Witcher series itself.
Mm-hmm.
The character work is complex, more so than I thought it would be given its runtime, and the voice work is great. Like it is on par, in my opinion, with what we got from Dota of Dragon's Blood,
Yep.
from what we got from Castlevania, even.
Wow.
I think as a one-off kind of like OVA, I guess you could call this,
Mm-hmm.
within the Witcher universe that Netflix has set up, it's a solid entry. I'm gonna give this a 7.5 out of 10 because I
Ooh,
really enjoyed
nice.
it. Like there was no point in time that I felt like distracted. The pace doesn't ever kind of let up. I have to say that again, the monster designs are fantastic, and the gore is okay. I think right that the gore here might be the best out of the three kind of big Netflix adaptations that we've had so far. Like Dragon's Blood was pretty gory, Castlevania was pretty gory, but like there's quite a fair bit of body horror here. That just takes it up a slight notch from the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I completely enjoyed it. Despite the fact that very honestly, anybody who is not paying attention, if you were to watch any episode of Castlevania or Dragon's Blood or Nightmare of the Wolf back to back, they would probably think it's the same anime. Um, but if you give it out and give it a bit of time and attention, right? Like they do feel like very distinct franchises. That being said, I do feel that Netflix animation is starting to trend towards a certain look,
I agree. Yeah.
and I'm worried. I
Yeah.
think 3 at this point in time is okay.
Mm.
But we are also getting a League of Legends adaptation,
That's right. Yeah.
which, from what I understand, is also by Studio Mer.
Mm.
And it's not like they can't do anything else, right? Because like they did keep on Age of Wonder Beast, which is like a totally different art style,
Yep.
and so on and so forth. But I'm a bit worried that they need to shake things up a bit. Like we are at a point in time where these kind of like Netflix animation stuff is giving us really solid stories, really awesome soundtracks, great character work, great animation, and all of that. But um it's going to take a while before they reach like the heights of anime necessarily, in terms of like the variety and the specific looks that we get and the aesthetics that we get from anime to anime. um
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of my only concern. Outside of that, like, again, 7.5 for me. Nightmare of the Wolf, did you catch it, Hits?
No, I've not got it yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I highly recommend it. It does fit very well into what they've already given us with the Witcher series. I think it's a nice kind of like gap filler between now and when season 2 starts. Gives you a bit more of a look at the world build and the history behind where Gerald's story takes place, and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps a bit of a better understanding of the social implications of what witches are and how they are situated within their world. Vesemir is a
Mm.
compelling character. It's but again, he's kind of like this roguish, likable, a bit like what's his face in Castlevania, a bit like the guy in Dragon Knight as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you enjoy all of that, and you enjoy Witcher, I highly recommend watching The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf.
Awesome. It has a big fandom out there. I'm sure it's getting good numbers for Netflix. And I'm sure the Witcherverse is something that they're investing heavily in.
Oh yeah,
And we will, of course, be covering Witcher Season 2 once it comes around in November, December-ish.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that then. We will be back in a few weeks' time. As always, behold us out there. The next couple of episodes are going to be covering very, very different things.
Hmm.
In a couple of weeks' time, we'll be back because I want to talk about Amazon Prime specifically as a streaming service. On this show, on this genre equality show, we've talked a lot about the expense. We
Yeah.
talked a lot about the boys. We've even covered Fleabag
Hmm.
in an episode of Behold.
Yep.
But I would like to showcase that there are other things on Amazon Prime that are very good as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Catastrophe, and One Mississippi. Some of the smaller, well, maybe not Maisel, but the other two are definitely smaller shows that probably don't get the love that they deserve
Uh
on
huh.
Amazon Prime. Subsequently, a couple of weeks from then, we'll be talking about one of the most classic genres of all. film noir, and I'm
Mm.
limiting this to classic film noir. And the timeline for this is film noirs released between the 30s and the 50s.
Yep.
So this is all just real OG film noirs, the classic ones. The
Yeah.
Third Man, The Maltese
Mhm.
Falcon, Touch of Evil, and Sunset Boulevard are my favorite from the first wave, the first generation of
Yep.
film noir.
Hmm.
It is a genre that has been copied, tried and true. It's a genre that's still around today.
Yeah.
That is still being copied, and it's still a beloved genre. Like, I mean, it's gone into sci-fi, with Blade Runner, and many other things. In fact, the title I just talked about, Reminiscence, was basically a film noir.
Hmm.
So we'll be talking about that then, and then 1 month from now, Genre Quality 46 is back.
Oh yeah.
Um, Marvel is back on the big screen with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Hmm.
We finally are getting what we've been promised in Iron Man 3. The Mandarin is here, and I'm psyched for it. And he's played by Wong Kar-wai favorite Tony Leung.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Very interesting. The lead is Sneak Attack. Kim's Convenience star Simi Liu. Aquafina is in it. It looks to be a very much more competent take on the martial arts genre than Iron Fist ever was. So
Uh-huh.
we're excited to watch that next month. Plus, My Hero Academia has ended, well, or will be ending in 3 or 4 episodes this current season, and we'll talk
Yep.
about that. I do have to say, I'm super enjoying the My Villain Academia arc.
Yeah.
It's been very cool. Plus, Star Wars Visions is probably the most excited I've been for Star Wars this year. I mean, there hasn't been anything else, like, Mandalorian ended last
Oh
year.
well, bad batch.
True,
Yeah.
but I mean, Visions just seems like so fucking
I
cool,
mean,
right?
it's Star Wars and anime. Like you got me right there.
Yeah, yeah, it has this like animatrix vibe lah.
Yeah.
Plus on Quick Hits, I'll be covering Midnight Mass, which is the new show by the creator of The Haunting of Hill House / Bly Manor.
Hmm.
So kind of it's probably going to be good. Netflix seems to give him these titles close to Halloween, so why not?
Yeah.
We'll be talking about the new Candyman, which is a sequel from the 1980s. Sorry, the early 1990s cult classic. The final episode of Adventure Time, Distant Lands. The pull list is something that I got myself accidentally pulled into. I wanted to read the Foundation universe, and
Yeah.
I read the Foundation trilogy very easily. It's one of the best. I mean, it sounds fucking cliche, lah. Isaac Asimov is a genius. Yeah, of course we know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the Foundation universe particularly is one of his like peak works.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to get into it. I read it. I thought, I immediately came to the conclusion that Dune was super inspired by this. I
Yep.
wrote an article about it,
Yep.
and then I started reading, the later editions of the Foundation
Uh-huh.
universe, also by Isaac Asimov, of course, that he wrote before he died. And then in his final book, Foundation and Earth, I was like excited slash like upset,
Hmm.
because like there suddenly characters from his robot universe were in there.
Yep.
Plot points from his Empire universe was in there, and I was like, motherfucker, I only wanted to read 7 books, okay?
Yep.
And then like the final book of Foundation drew me into reading 18 books and 53 short stories, because
Hmm.
they were all in the same universe.
Hmm.
And while I have enjoyed it thoroughly,
Yep.
I do have to say that this was more of a time commitment than I planned for.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I've spent 3-4 weeks reading fucking 18 books, and I'm gonna talk about this. So I'm gonna talk about that
Oh yeah.
in the next episode of Genre Equality.
Yeah. Do it. Do it. I think people always talk, okay, you know what? If you're going to read all of Lord of the Rings, it's going to be a time sink. You're going to read all of Dune, it's going to be a time sink. No one really thinks about reading all of Isaac Asimov. And I don't know how you pulled that off in 3 to 4 weeks, because that is a lot, my friend. It is a lot.
Mm.
But well done. I'm looking forward to this discussion, actually.
Yeah. I did not know that his three major stories, his three major series all took place in the same universe. And I was very excited slash upset to find that out. Because like when I read that, I was like, oh
Damn
fuck,
it.
I got so much more to read, you know. And then because after the sequels to Foundation, there are the prequels, and the prequels are very tied into the robot
Yeah.
stories, and I was
Yeah.
like, I got to go back to like iRobot. Like I got to go back there, and then I got to read all the short stories. I got to read everything else.
Yeah.
If not, I'm not gonna get the scope of this. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk about it soon. Yeah. That's been it for this episode of Genre Equality. This has been Hidzir.
I'm Isa.
Goodbye, guys.
No.